Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Wednesday, January 23rd. It's about 4:01 Eastern Time, awaiting Apple's earnings. The Dow Jones finished up about 65 points to 13,776. S&P 500 rose 2 points. NASDAQ 10 to 3153. So for the Dow and S&P, yet another 5-year plus high. Remember, after the close yesterday, IBM and Google reported strong earnings, so that helped today's market action. IBM finished up about $8.50, Google up $38. Apple was up $9 before its earnings come out. I don't know if we're going to catch that in this broadcast. Oh, I should note, my alma mater, Wake Forest, go Deacons, last night for the first time in about 3 years, the men's basketball team defeated a top 25 opponent, North Carolina State. We're very proud of that in Deacon land. Anyway, the House today voted 285 to 144 to suspend enforcement of the federal debt limit through May 18. The White House said President Obama would not oppose the temporary nature of the measure. Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid said the Senate would advance it, probably vote on it next week. So no immediate crisis on the debt ceiling. On May 19, the debt limit would automatically be reset at a higher level, reflecting the additional borrowing beyond the $16.4 trillion current level, additional borrowing that will take place between now and May 18. So you still have the March 1 sequester, the March 27 continuing resolution to fund the government through September, and all kinds of opportunities for mischief. Democrats won't want domestic spending cut as part of the sequester. Republicans don't want to cut defense. But it forces the issue. The same thing with the continuing resolution. European Central Bank Chief Mario Draghi said in Frankfurt last night, "We can begin 2013 on a more confident note precisely because significant progress was made during 2012. Draghi said the darkest clouds over the euro area subsided. Europe's leaders recognize that monetary union needs to be complemented by a financial union, a fiscal union, a genuine economic union, and eventually a deeper political union." And indeed, Portugal had a very good bond auction today, but the Bank of Spain said GDP in that country contracted 0.6% from the previous 3 months. It's zero contracted in the fourth quarter over the third. That's the 6th straight quarter of contraction in Spain. The IMF said today that the Eurozone economy is expected to shrink 0.1% for 2013. 3 months ago, it had forecast growth of 0.2%. And not for nothing, but Slovenia has a real crisis of both government and finances amid massive corruption allegations against the Prime Minister, who I believe has been in power only about 1 year. So Slovenia may need a bailout. GDP in its third quarter, the most recently reported one, fell 3.3% from a year earlier. On to Israel. To me, the biggest, most important story, at least for today. No other way to describe the Israeli vote than that it was an embarrassing rebuke to Benjamin Netanyahu. The Likud Beitenu party will be the largest with 31 seats, But that is not only down from 42, it is essentially just 1/4 of the 120-seat Knesset. The big winner was former TV celebrity Yair Lapid, whose new centrist Yesh Atid party, that means there's a future, gained 19 seats. I think he was expecting about 11. The opposition Labour Party was third, they're normally second, with 15 seats, and Naftali Bennett, head of the ultra-nationalist Jewish Home Party, came in at 11 seats. So, coalition talks started immediately. Here are a few statements from the last 24 hours. Netanyahu indicated that he would build a broad-based coalition and pledged to show responsibility in striving for a genuine peace. The government that we shall form will be based on 5 principles, first of which is to prevent a nuclear Iran. Netanyahu then invited Lapid to help him to form a government. Lapid told his supporters that he would strike a moderate tone in coalition negotiations. Quote, "A heavy responsibility has fallen on our shoulders tonight." This is Lapid. "The people have said no to the politics of hatred and fear, no to extremism, no to anti-democracy. The state of Israel is facing difficult challenges," Lapid added. "We are facing an economic crisis that is threatening to crush the Israeli middle class. We are facing a world that is liable to ostracize us because of the deadlock in the peace process. We are facing the fear of the dissolution of society that is being caused by the issue of equal sharing of the burden." Lapid wants the role of foreign minister for granting his support in a new coalition. The presence of a strong centrist party would give Netanyahu room for maneuver, including possible reopening of peace talks with the Palestinians. Likud activists, though, pointed fingers at the Israel Beitenu party, their partners on the joint ticket, saying it had been a mistake to merge with the party of Avigdor Lieberman, the ex-foreign minister who stepped down as part of a corruption scandal. When the campaign began a couple months ago, Netanyahu's ticket was expected to win up to 48 seats, and they end up with 31. Stephen Miller, an Israeli political analyst, told the Jerusalem Post, "I believe we are seeing the beginning of the end of Netanyahu. He will be prime minister, but it will be a coalition that is very difficult to control, and it is unlikely to last very long." I actually disagree with it. Netanyahu has sidestepped the issue of forcing ultra-Orthodox religious students to serve in the army, an issue that if I was an Israeli, I would be extremely upset about. He has sidestepped it since the law exempting religious students from military service expired last year. Ultra-Orthodox parties bitterly oppose the proposal, but yesterday's result underscored the groundswell of feeling among ordinary citizens that religious families should share their burden, and Lapid certainly favors sharing the burden of military service. The thing is, the ultra-Orthodox smaller parties have been part of Netanyahu's traditional coalition. Continuing with the last 24 hours then, in the past few hours, Lapid rejected calls from the Labour leader to form an obstructionist bloc to keep Netanyahu from being prime minister. Lapid said, "We will not be part of an obstructionist bloc." So he firmly threw his support behind the formation of the government led by Netanyahu, stating that the results of the election had made the will of the people clear and he would work according to those results. Lapid expressed optimism that Netanyahu had voiced a willingness to tackle the issues which he himself champions, again, equality in military service being among the leading ones. And for his part, Avigdor Lieberman, Netanyahu's partner and former foreign minister, said he would take the finance slot if asked, opening up the foreign minister position for Lapid. And Britain. In a major speech today, Prime Minister David Cameron promised an in-out referendum on the European Union if the Conservatives win the next election slated for 2015. Cameron wants to renegotiate the UK's relationship with the EU before calling the vote, which will be no later than November 2017, but probably a lot sooner. Cameron has been under pressure from many of his MPs to give a binding commitment to a vote on Europe. In a speech, Cameron said, "The next Conservative manifesto in 2015 will ask for a mandate from the British people for a Conservative government to negotiate a new settlement with our European partners in the next Parliament. And when we have negotiated that new settlement, we will give the British people a referendum with a very simple in or out choice to stay in the EU on these new terms or come out altogether. It will be an in-out referendum." Holding the referendum today would be a false choice because Europe is set to change following the Eurozone crisis. Cameron's strategy is to publish a draft bill before 2015, before the elections. But he's going to try and thread the needle in saying that he wants Britain to play a committed and active part in the EU, that the EU is better for Britain being in it, but that the EU must change, specifically send more power to national capitals. Today, public disillusionment with the EU is at an all-time high, Cameron said. People resented the intrusion into national life with unnecessary rules and regulations. Democratic consent in Britain for the EU was, quote, wafer thin. Now, Cameron's timetable is conditional on two big events: an outright Tory victory in 2015 and a willingness by other EU countries, Germany in particular, to write new rules for the Eurozone into Brussels treaties, so that Cameron can then extract concessions. So, Germany said the UK could not cherry pick, while France, responding to Cameron's speech, said a la carte membership was not on the table. However, German Chancellor Angela Merkel called for a fair compromise between the wishes of Britain and other EU states. So we have a long way to go, but trust me, this is a hugely important issue. North Korea lashed out against the UN Security Council and their condemnation of its December launch of a long-range rocket, saying on Wednesday that it will strengthen its military defenses, including its nuclear weaponry. It's a rather defiant statement from North Korea's foreign ministry. This after the Security Council unanimously adopted a resolution concerning the December launch as a violation of a ban against nuclear and missile activity. Understand the resolution required approval from China, so that makes it duly significant. Foreign Ministry called the launch a peaceful bid to send a satellite into space rather than a test of long-range missile technology. It said North Korea should counter the U.S. hostile policy with strength, not with words. An analyst I was reading at a think tank in Seoul said the wording from North Korea considerably and strongly hints at the possibility of a nuclear test, so they had told China they were going to be conducting one between January 13th and the 20th. I see shares in Apple are up $2, but I don't know if they have released earnings yet. India is a bit worrisome. Local officials in the Indian part of Kashmir are advising civilians to construct fallout shelters and to stock rations for a possible nuclear attack. That's according to the Associated Press. The Nation magazine reported the other day that the Indian military has begun a massive project to build subterranean depots for holding armaments, rockets, and missiles not far from its boundary lines with both China and Pakistan. Up to 18 underground weapon depots are planned to enhance the Indian Army's ability to move quickly into action. And the depots are also supposed to supply shelter in the event of an attack of a biological or chemical nature, let alone nuclear. The Times of India reported that Pakistan has boosted its nuclear arsenal to roughly 115 warheads from the previously estimated 90 to 110. Pakistan is expanding its atomic arsenal at a faster pace than any other country, according to the Times of India. India, for its part, has 80 to 100 warheads. Finally, Secretary of State Hillary Clinton was at Senate hearings today, which I caught part of on CNN. Top Republican senators rejected her explanations on Benghazi, with Senator Rand Paul, at least in my opinion, being brutal with her. He ripped her, suggesting she should have been fired for not reading requests for additional security. Senator Paul, who's going to be quite a candidate in 2016, said, quote, "Had I been president at the time and I found that you did not read the cables from Benghazi, you did not read the cables from Ambassador Stevens, I would have relieved you of your post. I think it's inexcusable." Senator John McCain also categorically rejected some answers of Clinton, saying 4 months on, the American public still did not have basic information. That's all for today. I'll be back with you tomorrow, Thursday. Keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. Little news from Mali today, which is good. Vive la France. Take care.